This FedGov Today program is sponsored by TrackVia. On this edition of FedGov Today, the next step is coming in the Army's innovation effort.
The bigger operational plan for the Army is to have a JIOP at each Corps headquarters. The 18th Airborne Corps is the trial here, so they're measuring how successful this is, and so far it's been pretty good.
Colonel Tom Monaghan on FedGov Today in just a moment. Federal programs are still running on spreadsheets, SharePoint, and systems built with old technology. That creates more work and slows things down. TrackVia Government is a workflow modernization platform that lets agencies and prime partners quickly digitize program delivery, field services, compliance reporting, and operations, delivering secure, audit-ready workflows without lengthy implementations. Modern, mobile, mission-ready. Learn more at trackvia.com/government. The Army's new Joint Innovation Outpost is testing ways to deliver capability faster and more broadly across the service. The Army says the JIOP, quote, bridges the gap between operational needs and cutting-edge solutions by uniting government, industry, academia, and capital. Colonel Tom Monaghan is director of the JIOP. Colonel, welcome. It's great to have you on the program. Tell me more broadly the mission of the JIOP and who you're delivering that capability to. Welcome, sir.
Well, first off, Francis, I'd like to thank you for taking the time today to talk to me. Great to be here. This is a new mission for the Army. It's the first time that the Army has decided to operationalize an acquisition professional or an acquisition cell at a core level. So, quick backstory. I was in command down in Orlando, Florida at PO Stride, now CPST3. I got a call from the Pentagon from the Deputy Acquisition Systems Manager. Says, hey, we have a unique mission set. We have a problem set that we kind of need you to address. We have equipment rolling off the line from industry, but we're having difficulty addressing what we would call the last mile. Is this the piece of kit that the soldier, the warfighter really needs? And we want to couple you with a core commander so you can address the requirement right there on the spot and feed that directly back into industry. So in layman's terms, it's kind of improved lethality, survivability, and mobility of the operational force through informed real-time feedback from the warfighter directly into industry and directly into the Army's procurement mechanism or ASALT.
How do you collect that feedback from the soldier at the front lines and get that information to where it needs to go so that it can have the impact that you want it to have?
Yeah, so thanks, Francis. Great question. So we basically have three different swim lanes. So I'll start from the top. We have TIOs, Technical Innovation Objectives. Those are core commander-directed problem sets. So basically, the core commander will say, this is a capability gap in my formation. And it's more of a project with a team of teams. We'll have a representative from the user community or the unit. We'll have subject matter experts. We'll have acquisition professionals that we'll pull in. We'll have industry partners. And we kind of come together in the JIOP in this little micro ecosystem. And we norm, storm, inform, and kind of figure out a path forward for that particular problem set. So that's the TIO. Then we have soldier-derived solutions. So think of good ideas from a soldier. Hey, I have an idea. It's put into a digital repository. We pull it out. We look at it and review it and go, oh, this is a pretty good idea. It either addresses a problem we currently have, it addresses a problem we currently have with a proposed solution, or it comes up with a brand new problem set that we weren't even thinking of with that potential solution set. And then we have what I call the industry direct to like, hey, we have a good idea. So an industry idea that addresses a hole in our swing or a gap. And an example of that is we had a company come to us probably around December. Hey, we understand the Army has a problem with counter UAS, drones. We have an anti-drone round we'd love to show you. The normal procurement process and the normal timeline for all that is probably months and years of just getting on a calendar, setting up a demonstration while we scratched all that. And I said, hey, if you got something, show me. Can you bring it to Fort Bragg? Sure. Okay. Can we shoot it at Fort Bragg? Well, we'll use one of our off-post ranges. So in about 30 days, they brought it here. They demonstrated it. We said, we're kind of interested in that. And we're pulling that through the pipeline. So those are the three main swim lanes that we get the need of the warfighter through the JIOP, through the ecosystem, in the ASALT, and into the industry.
You used a word earlier that strikes me as one of the important ones to that third swim lane that you just addressed, and that word is requirements. What you hit on, it sounds like, in that third swim lane is the ability for people from all over the place to bring you solutions to problems without you having to say it has to do these 15, 20, 30, 50 things in this certain way. Am I on the right track there?
Yeah, Francis, that's correct. And we came up with a pretty simplistic, I would say, method of doing that. So again, I'm an acquisition professional. The normal way of doing this is we would have a vetted requirement. It would be established. It would be approved. We would release that to industry. Industry would spend months or years and X amount of dollars coming up with a proposal. By the time that's all done, the requirement sometimes is OBE because time is also a requirement. So we came up with a industry rapid technology 9-liner, have it hung on a website, and we asked industry not to put a whole lot of dollars into the actual proposal, just send us a screenshot or a slide. Here's the capability, here's what we think it addresses, and here's how we think it can help you. So that's the way they communicate with us, and that's how they show us what they have. And that so far, I mean, I knew it would be a hot item. The day we launched it, I think we had 400 submissions in 1 week with ideas from mold sensors to new counter UAS devices to rockets to vehicles, all sorts of things that we've been able to look at and then reach out directly to that vendor.
I imagine your biggest challenge with that kind of volume is establishing some sort of prioritization framework to be able to determine these things are the things we need the most, or maybe these things are the things that could solve a problem the fastest or fit into our budget most easily. Or I imagine that's maybe your biggest challenge there just because of the number of responses you got.
No, Francis, that's the beauty about being nested with a Corps commander. So all of those items, we periodically take up through the chain of command and say, gentlemen, sir, like we think these things address either that TIO or the soldier-derived solution or the problem set that you came up with. As a matter of fact, in that 9-line, we also released the core innovation priority. So industry already has a good idea of what we're looking for, and we start to roll that back through the chain of command structure and periodically give the CG an overview of here's what we've seen from industry, here's what we think works, here's what we'd like to invest in as far as a rapid prototyping event or some type of RDT&E type event, and then go forward from there.
One of the things that struck me, I read about this, my former colleague Mark Pomerleau wrote about it in Breaking Defense, and he wrote this that jumped out at me. This is the first time an operational command has acquisition professionals and decision authority up to $50 million of mostly R&D funds. What's the significance of that in your ability to deliver faster and through the type of framework that you've described here?
Oh, thanks, Francis. Like I said before, this is the first time the Army has decided to nest this acquisition professional cell with a Corps. We actually call it an operational acquisition detachment, and that's really what it is. I have delegated acquisition authority direct from the Army Acquisition Executive, Honorable Ingraham, to initiate funding up to $50 million per effort on behalf of the 18th Airborne Corps. And I have a limited budget, but I can address specific things, or I can go back to the bigger Army and say, hey, here's a bigger potential solution set that the Army as a whole may be able to use. So I'll start that initial development piece and then roll it up through a program acquisition executive and into their portfolio. So I am tied directly into the 6 other program acquisition executives in the Army. How
does that connection work, and how could that connection potentially scale so that other organizations in the Army could do what you're doing?
Great question. So if we identify something that is just specific for the 18th Airborne Corps, maybe a new type of parachute or something that stays in here, we'll kind of concentrate inside of the division. But if it's something bigger, and I'm trying to think of an example. So a good example, drone cases. So the Army spent a lot of money putting together all these micro drones for soldiers to bring onto the battlefield. They never thought about how to get the drone from the box to the battlefield. So what we did at the 18th Airborne Corps, soldiers from the 82nd developed a modular drone case that's jumpable, it's padded, all for about $150. So now you don't have to take the big box for the drone, just take the drone case. Now the Army would like to take that drone case and add that to the basis of issue for the drones. So that scales up and rolls into the bigger Army. So what we do here is we put together a transition package that shows the cost at echelon. So price break 100, 200, 1,000. Here's the cost. Here's where we think it could be used. And this is the supplier or the NSN for the item. That's just one example of a couple that we're working on.
Scarlet Dragon is what, sir? And what's JIOP's connection to this year's Scarlet Dragon exercise?
So Scarlet Dragon is kind of the annual or semi-annual big instrumentation, like synthetic exercise for the 18th Airborne Corps. And prior to me getting here, they would take a lot of developmental technologies and pull them into the actual exercise to see if they could work for the Corps. What the JIOP's been able to do is kind of back off some of those developmental technologies and kind of, with soldiers, train them in the dirt, see what works well, and then roll a more mature product for bigger, more thorough evaluation in the Scarlet Dragon exercise. So we're really tied hand in hand.
How do you expect to keep this pushing forward? How do you want to grow it? How do you want to transmit it to other parts of the Army and so on?
So the bigger operational plan for the Army is to have a JIOP at each Corps headquarters. So there'll potentially be 3 CONUS and maybe 1 OCONUS with 5th Corps. The 18th Airborne Corps is the trial here. So they're measuring how successful this is. And so far it's been pretty good. I had about 2 years to get this up and running. And after about 6 months, the Chief of Staff of the Army, the Undersecretary of the Army, the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, the T2 Com Commander all came to the JIOP to kind of get a brief on how we were doing things, where they could help, and where they could kind of steer this. So I think it's here to stay. And so far, we've been able to actually allocate individuals through the Army assignment process to permanently stationed acquisition professionals with the Corps headquarters.
How much of the structure that you built is lift and shift to other parts of the Army, and how much of it's mission dependent that would have to be tweaked in in other places?
I don't think there's a lot of tweaking, Francis. It literally is a very small footprint. It's just about 5 to 7, 51 Charlie, 51 Alpha. Those are acquisition professional MOSs co-located at the Corps headquarters in one operational acquisition detachment. Again, one of those teams per Corps is about all you need to create that synergy of that micro ecosystem between the warfighter industry back into the Army and the Army back into the JIOP ecosystem. So having one at each Corps headquarters is probably the right way to go. Not a very huge lift, I think.
You mentioned some pretty high-profile eyeballs that have their eyes on this and are watching your progress. How would you judge the progress of this? What will the outcomes be that will cause you to say, yeah, I'm satisfied with this, it's fulfilling the vision that we set out for it?
So I like a phrase one of the senior leaders here used: always proud, never satisfied. So there's always things we can do and improve on. So I'll start with that. My litmus test, I would say, is I go to talk to the warfighters, the soldiers using the equipment, and I'll ask, is what you have good enough? And then if yes, how could you make it better? If not, give me all the cons on why this doesn't work. And I go back to the drone case example. It seems like it's so simplistic, but the Army spends $10,000 to $20,000 per drone, and the soldiers had no way to get it out of the box into the battlefield. I mean, we've got to overcome that. And there, again, multiple examples I could use on things we're doing.
Sir, I appreciate a chance to learn about what you're doing with the JIOP. Thanks for your time today.
Well, thanks a lot, Francis. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
You can read more about the JIOP on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. 4 components make up a transformation that's underway at the Defense Logistics Agency. The leader of DLA lists those 4 as data, divesting legacy services, mission reassessment, and an infrastructure footprint review. Lieutenant General Mark Simmerly, the director of DLA, tells you about the transformation on this week's FedGov Today TV. The new show's out now. You can watch on demand on the FedGov Today YouTube channel and on fedgovtoday.com. The next FedGov Today podcast is coming Tuesday. I'm Francis Rose. I'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening.